Subcommittee. Got a new sound system in here, and I can really hear my own voice up here from the dais, so interesting. We've got a somewhat lengthy agenda to get through today. I don't have anybody signed up for public comment. Is anybody that's out there in the audience wishing to make a public comment, address the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee? All right, I'm seeing none. I will declare the public comment period closed. For a tentative consent agenda, I have everything except committee items 1, 4, and 7. So committee item 1 is RS 2024-905, 4 is RS 2025-984, and 7 is RS 2025-987. So those are the items that I do not have on the tentative consent agenda. Does anybody have items that they would like to additionally remove? Councilmember Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. You got over half my list. I'd also like to remove item 3, 983, and item 10, 992.
All right, so that's committee items 3, RS 983, and item 10?
Yes, sir.
Copy. That is RS 2025-992. So we've removed those two items from consent. Does anybody have any other items you want to pull off for questions, comments, discussion, any other reason? All right, seeing none, so I will now read the consent agenda. All right, proposed consent agenda beginning with committee item 2. This is RS 2025-982 by Porterfield, Gamble, and Parker. This approves an intergovernmental agreement between the State of Tennessee Department of Transportation and NDOT for the installation of safety improvements on Gallatin Pike from Liberty Lane to Northside Drive. Next, we have committee item 5. This is RS 2025-985 by Porterfield, Parker, Wiener, and Allen. This supports the beautification of a retaining wall located at 214 Old Hickory Boulevard and approving an application for a license agreement between NDOT and the State of Tennessee Department of Transportation. Committee item 6. This is RS 2024-986 by Wiener, Porterfield, and Parker. This approves a participation agreement between NDOT and HCA Services of Tennessee Incorporated for maintenance of existing landscaping for the newly extended median on Harpeth Valley Road. Committee item 8, this is RS 2025-988 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes Pete's Dueling Piano Bar to construct and install aerial encroachments. My mic is cutting off pretty frequently. So again, committee item 8 authorizes Pete's Dueling Piano Bar to construct and install aerial encroachments at 150 2nd Avenue North. Committee item 9, this is RS 2025-991 by Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, Ewing, Allen, and Huffman. This accepts a grant from the State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation to the Metropolitan Department of Water and Sewerage Services Waste Division to fund the purchase of curbside recycling carts and AI technology to pilot contamination identification. Committee item 11, this is RS 2025-993 by Porterfield, Parker, Allen, and Huffman, approves a grant application for the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency to the Metropolitan Department of Waste Services to fund the first phase of a multi-phase plan to invest in collection infrastructure and specialized equipment. Committee item 12, this is RS 2025-994 by Gamble, Parker, and Taylor. This authorizes the Metropolitan government to abandon existing public sanitary sewer main and sanitary sewer manhole and to accept new public sanitary sewer main and sanitary sewer manholes for properties located at 1820B Hermosa Street and 1809 Morena Street, also known as homes at 1820 Hermosa. Committee item 13, this is RS 2025-995 by Toombs, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan government to accept new public sanitary sewer mains and sanitary sewer manholes for 3 properties located at 2306, 2308, and 2310 Ilolo Street, also known as Ilolo Street Sewer Extension. Committee item 14, this is RS 2025-996 by Gamble and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan government to accept new public sanitary sewer main and public sanitary sewer manhole for 3 properties located on Tusculum Road and Bart Drive, also known as Mariposa Park. Committee item 15, this is RS 2025-997 by Toombs, Gamble, and Parker. This amends ordinance BL 2024-265 to authorize the Metropolitan government to modify the linear feet of water and sanitary sewer mains and sanitary sewer manholes to be abandoned and accepted for property located at 325 West Trinity Lane, also known as Madison Trinity Apartments Revision 1. We have an amendment on that one by Toombs. Do we need to bring that off of consent then? All right, we're going to remove item 15, but we've already read the caption in. All right, committee item 16, this is BL 2024-678 by Gamble and Parker. This adopts the Geographic Information System street and alley centerline layer with the recordation of renamings and additions and deletions of acceptances and abandonments as reflected on the centerline layer to date as the official street and alley acceptance and maintenance record for the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Committee item 17, this is BL 2024-679 by Gamble and Parker, an ordinance authorizing Lafayette Owner LLC to construct and install an underground encroachment at 601 Lafayette Street. Committee item 18, this is BL 2024-680 by Prep T, Gamble and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to accept new public sanitary sewer mains, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for two properties located at 1110C and 1112C Caldwell Lane. Having heard all of the items on the proposed consent agenda, would any member please move and another second the consent agenda? Second. All right, any discussion on the consent agenda? Does anything need to be removed? All right, seeing none, we will go to a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval of the consent agenda. 11 in favor. 11 in favor, 0 against. All right. To our items not on the consent agenda, we'll start with committee item 1. This is resolution RS 2024-905 by Eastlick, Stiles, Coop, Huffman, Horton, and Bradford. This is a resolution urging the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to increase traffic enforcement and the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure to improve the physical environment for everyone using the road. Do we have a motion? All right, moved and properly seconded. We have an amendment as well as a substitute on this, but I will go first to the lead sponsor, Councilmember Eastlick. Councilmember Eastlick, can you tell us what's going on here?
Yes, thank you for the time, even though I'm not part of this committee. This is a simple, non-binding resolution to try to enforce our traffic laws a little better. Since becoming a council member, one of the top issues, emails that I get, is between wanting traffic calming on streets and wanting to slow people down on the roads. I met with, at the time, Raymond Jones, who was the captain of the traffic division, as well as Chief Drake. I've met with NDOT about this, and coming together, this resolution gives us a backdrop of how we may be able to do better engineering, as well as increase the number of traffic stops and enforce the laws better. I've met also with Jill Fitchard from the Community Review Board as well, and have tried to work out some of the issues that we'll have. I think between the dash cams, body cams, the review board, the traffic captain, as well as the police chief, that we have enough pieces in place to make sure that this doesn't get off the rails and go any other way. The amendment to this asks that we fill the unfilled positions on the traffic, in traffic division. From the beginning, they put Operation 1072 together, which is vehicle break-ins and stolen vehicles. They put more people on that task force immediately than we've had on our traffic division in a number of years. There are more possibilities for deaths, accidents, and laws being broken on the streets than there are vehicles being broken into or stolen. So if we're going to put resources to something that's going to make a big difference on our streets and for the residents of Davidson County, it should be better enforcing the traffic laws.
Thank you, sir. And I think maybe the most appropriate way to handle this for the explanation, thank you for the explanation on the underlying resolution and the amendment. We also have the sponsor of the proposed substitute here, who is not a member of this committee, and I think I would like to go to the sponsor of the substitute if that's appropriate, and then we'll go to committee members for any motions on the substitute or the amendment. Councilmember Toombs, you're recognized on your substitute.
Thank you, Chair. So with the substitute, I also worked with MMPD, NDOT, the Community Review Board, as well as the Mayor's Office to craft the language of the substitute. At the beginning with the initial resolution, there was significant concern, particularly from the Minority Caucus, regarding mass traffic stops. Given the history of traffic stops in Nashville with the Driving While Black report in 2016 and the policing project in 2018, and we do know that traffic stops significantly reduced after that. You also have Chief Drake's precision policing that he has implemented. We understand that we do need to enforce our traffic laws as well as make our streets safer. And so the language of the substitute, it emphasizes the 4 areas that the police look at when they're doing traffic stops, which is reckless driving, DUI, speeding, and there's one other that I can't remember off the top of my head, but asking them to continue to focus on those areas as well as present a plan as is in the original resolution of how they're going to do traffic enforcement with those, looking at those in those precise areas, as well as with NDOT asking them to come up with ideas of how to improve our traffic calming program. And so again, working with all the groups, this is the language that everyone was comfortable with. And I think that it addresses some of the concerns that the Minority Caucus had in terms of there being mass traffic stops and going back to those biases that we saw that were prevalent several years back.
Thank you very much for that explanation of the substitute. So that was Councilmember Toombs' substitute. Do we have any questions, motions? I see Coupin, Eastlick, Horton, Allen, Benedict. Okay, let me make a list. I'm sorry. Okay, so I said Coupin, Eastlick, Horton, Cash, Benedict. All right, I've got Coupin, Eastlick, Horton, Cash, Allen, Benedict, Evans, Siegel. Does anybody else seek to be recognized on this? All right, thank you. We will go first to Councilmember Coupin. Councilmember Coupin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to both my colleagues who brought the original legislation and the substitute. I think this is a really important measure. As my colleague said, one of the biggest things we hear about is reckless and dangerous driving on the roads. In the last couple of months, I've lost countless people on the street here in District 19. I know that's going on throughout the city, so I think this is a really important endeavor. I'm supportive of the amendment to also request the filling of the vacancies, and then also rise in support of the substitute. I think that the substitute encompasses the original intention of the bill. I don't think it takes away from what we're trying to do, from asking for, NDOT to look at, infrastructure improvements, to have MMPD look at traffic improvements and enforcement. But to my colleague's point, I think it addresses some of the concerns that I also heard from the community about making sure that we acknowledge where we came from and what the problems were in the past, making sure that we don't repeat those again, and focusing it for the major major violations. And that list of major violations came directly from MNPD. It's what they're already kind of prioritizing. And so the request is to keep them doing what they're doing, but do it in more depth. So supportive of the amendment, supportive of the substitute, and hope my colleagues support that as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. And just a reminder, we will need a motion on both the amendment and the substitute at some point for those to be considered. So I'll go next to my list to Councilmember Horton. Councilmember Horton. Vice Chair Horton, apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to both the sponsor of the bill and the substitute. I think this is a good bill. I think every resolution, I think every couple meetings we in some way endorse or support our Vision Zero plan, and the number of pedestrian deaths in our city remain unfortunately high, and the only acceptable number of pedestrian deaths is 0. And a key component of that is enforcement. And I think, unfortunately, we're failing on that. So I thank the sponsor for bringing this resolution and very supportive of it. I'm also grateful for Councilmember Toombs' substitute. I think this is a good, it's an improvement on the bill and not inconsistent with the original purpose. Particularly grateful for her work on flagging traffic calming as something that needs to be looked at and reevaluated. That's something that our district in West Nashville is concerned about, both on the length of time it takes to get, as well as how the decisions are structured and decisions are made. So proud to support the substitute as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Horton. Next, I had Councilmember Cash.
Thank you, Chair. I support this resolution, and I'm glad for the substitute. I do believe that we need to, if we're going to be truly set Vision Zero as a goal, we're going to have to not just focus on infrastructure, but also focus on drivers and driver behavior. However, we can't just go back to the way things were, 5-6 years ago. And what not only not ignore what caused the drop in enforcement, which I think is multifold, including safety of officers. But we gotta think outside the box here and not just say, hey, we haven't been doing enough enforcement. We got to go back and do it. And so I'm glad that these discussions are taking place, and hope that as we get updates on this, we can hear some of that like outside the box thinking, and hold drivers accountable for their bad behavior, but at the same time making sure that folks are safe as we implement that enforcement. So I'm supportive of both the substitute and the bill. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I had Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the substitute officially and echo all my colleagues in thanking both the sponsor for bringing this to our attention and getting it on our radar, and just raising the awareness of the need to include the enforcement piece of those 4 E's in Vision Zero. But I also appreciate the substitute being offered, and I feel like that has taken it a step further, just in terms of acknowledging the necessity of being precise in what it is we're enforcing. And distracted driving was the other one that that wasn't mentioned. So I appreciate where we're moving, and I would ask my colleagues to support the substitute and thank Mr. Eslick for just getting this on the radar.
All right. The substitute has been seconded. Councilmember Ellis, I'll put you in the queue. So I have a bunch of people in the queue. The substitute is now before us. We've kind of been discussing all 3 things. Does anyone have specific, because we're going to vote on the substitute, does anybody have specific discussion on the substitute? I'm going to start a parallel queue. I see Evan Siegel, Benedict, Ellis. Okay, I'll go to Councilmember Evan Siegel first. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo what my colleagues have said and thank Councilmember Eslick for bringing this up, and Councilmember Toombs for all of the work that she did on this. I think it's really important that when we have these conversations, we recognize that it is an incredibly important problem to fix, but it can't be done without the context of history. And so I would just encourage the department, if this passes, to think about ways to do traffic enforcement that are database and that we know tend to be less biased than we have in the past.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I had Councilmember Benedict. Councilmember Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of being succinct, that's what I was about to say. I think that I'm going to expand upon that, though, on the substitute. I'd like to thank my colleague for bringing the substitute. I think it's very important for us, as we talk, one of the things I talk about when I think about policing and police reform, and when we have things that come in front of us, I think about, are we utilizing our resources best, and are we building trust with the public? I think this is a great opportunity to say, let's get back to doing things like enforcement, and let's do it the right way, which our officers are awesome, and they know how to do things the right way. I trust they're going to do things the right way. Prove it. And now we can continue to give you more things that we entrust you with. Chair, thank you for allowing me to make comments that perhaps should have been for the Public Safety Committee now that I've made these comments. Having said that, I am supportive of the substitute. Again, I appreciate that it was brought, and I look forward to hearing the impact that this resolution has on these 2 important departments. No one should be put in harm's way due to unsafe and unwalkable streets. We absolutely need to do all we can. As my other colleague said, 0 deaths is the only number that's acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I had Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you,
are
Chair.
recognized.
I just wanted to thank Councilmember Toombs for bringing this substitute. I know that we worked right before we went on holiday for Thanksgiving on, making some changes and some recommendations that we wanted to put forth for the traffic calming to be added as well. Because oftentimes when you hear about transportation and the Vision Zero, it's primarily focused on the downtown area. So adding that traffic calming study in there and putting a time limit on when a recommendation should be brought forth is certainly appreciated. And I also wanted to say thank Councilmember Eastlick for even considering to go before the Community Review Board, understanding that the minority voice needs to be heard when it comes to police enforcement.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellis. And I had a question for Mr. Purvis or anybody else from NDOT. Mr. Purvis, if you could join us, we're on Councilmember Toombs' substitute to the enforcement resolution. And I think I'm going to get the right microphone here for you. The system's new. I've been working, several colleagues have reached out to me about having a meeting about our traffic calming program, and we've had that kind of in the works, along with NDOT's been kind of taking an internal look at the process. So we're hoping that there will be a dedicated meeting about traffic calming ahead of the first meeting in February for this committee. So that's tentative. It's likely, but look out for that. And I also had a question for you, specifically, Mr. Purvis. The language in the substitute reads, further requests that MNPD provide to council a plan for improved traffic enforcement, including review of non-police traffic enforcement options. Now, I understand that's a directive to MNPD, but how do we go about getting an analysis of the feasibility of like automated traffic enforcement? So for speeding and school zone violations and things like that, because I've heard differing opinions about how that could work and what would be necessary to implement that.
Right. Matt Purvis, Council Liaison for NDOT. As far as the process for that, I mean, it would, from my knowledge, it would have to start with legal to figure out what we can and can't do based on what's preempted by the state. And once we have an idea of what we can do, I imagine that we would leave the leading of that to MNPD, but we would be behind whatever the solutions end up being. This one's cut out too. But we would be behind MNPD on whatever solution they see as best. That's legal by state law.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. And I see council members Bradford, Ellis, and Cash. We have about 7 minutes left on the calendar, and we're on our first item. So I'm not seeking to cut discussion short, but we do have to be respectful of the other committees and of the compressed schedule that we have today. So I'll go to Councilmember Bradford quickly. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just very, very short, just to kind of answer your question. Just because this has come up in other meetings, state law prohibits us from using cameras to enforce traffic moving violations. So I just wanted that to go on the record that any kind of use of cameras to enforce traffic is banned by the state.
I think we're going to want to have folks look like they want to have a discussion on that point specifically, but I think we need to steer back to the substitute and move along with the agenda that we have before us today. I think a legal analysis is probably in order for that question, but we'll not be able to address that today. Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. And just to be real quick, Mr. Purvis, Indiana, the traffic calming in particular, we wanted to know, or the folks in my district want to know, the effectiveness of the speed humps. And I know that we're starting to get concerns from the fire and EMS about the response times as well. But more importantly, when it comes to the enforcement part of the traffic calming, we wanted to see how effective those speed bumps were and just get a study on that.
Mr. Purvis, if I may, so we're hoping to have a dedicated meeting about traffic calming with
Well, I said that in particular because Mr. Purvis said that he wanted to follow the lead of MNPD, but I think when it comes to traffic calming in particular, that is NDOT.
Correct, and we're hoping to have them join us at the first meeting in February for a dedicated presentation about traffic calming. Okay. If that's all right, Councilmember.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
Of course, okay. Chair, it's your...
Oh, sorry.
I said, of course, Chair, it's your ball game.
Thank you. Okay, folks, so recognizing that we really need to move on, are we prepared to take a vote on the substitute? Any other discussion on the substitute? All right, I'm seeing none. All those in favor of the substitute, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? That's 11. All right, 11 in favor of the substitute, 0 against, 0 not voting. We now have the resolution with the substitute recommended. Is there any further discussion on the resolution with the substitute recommended? All right, so it's been moved in second. Councilmember Spain and Councilmembers Coopin. Councilmember Spain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We still have another amendment to consider. Can I move the amendment from Councilmember?
Yes, sir, you're a committee member.
Then I'll move that amendment.
All right, is there a second? All right, properly moved and seconded. We now have the amendment before us. Any discussion on the amendment? Explanation, Councilmember Eastlick.
Thank you. The amendment just asked the MNPD fill the unfilled officers for the traffic division. We have 44, 50 are listed as available. I'm asking that they fill the rest of those positions.
So that's six.
So I got 43, 44 as an answer. Two different people, two different answers. So it's between 6
The
and
delta
7.
6 or 7. Thank you, sir.
Correct.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. All right. Anyone else seeking to be recognized on the amendment? Seeing none. All right. We will go to a vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right. Recommend approval of the amendment. 11 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right. So now we've got the resolution with the substitute on it and the amendment recommended before us. Can we get a motion on that? Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? Thank you. Recommend approval with the substitute and the amendment 1100. All right, next item not on consent. This is committee item 3. This is RS 2025-983 by Porterfield, Gamble, Parker, Welsh, and Allen. Approves Amendment 1 to an intergovernmental agreement between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and NDOT for the construction of pedestrian safety and multimodal intersection improvements at various locations throughout Nashville. Can we get a motion in a second, please? All right, properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on 983? Someone pulled it off consent. Councilmember Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
I have a question on this just for NDOT. Why are we increasing the amount that we are spending relative to the state?
Mr. Purvis, did you get that?
Yes, council liaison for NDOT. Answer is a little complicated, but it basically started with the original project conceit was using COVID relief dollars. And by the time we actually got to trying to draw from those dollars, they had been used in other places through Metro. So the financing source changed, and with that, the match changed. It was 100% federal dollars, and then with the new money source, it is now an 80-20 split with TDOT. So that's why we ended up contributing 20% to different portions of that project. So that's why our amount has increased.
Any further discussion? All right, we're going to go to a vote on resolution 983. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval. 11 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. All right, next we have committee item 4. This is RS 2025-984 by Parker, Porterfield, Gamble, and Allen. This approves Amendment 3 to an intergovernmental agreement between the State of Tennessee Department of Transportation and NDOT for the acceptance of work in connection with the construction of sidewalks on Dickerson Pike from Douglas Avenue to Trinity Lane. Can we get a motion in a second, please? All right, properly moved and seconded, and I pulled this off of consent. I was hoping to get an update from the department. We've extended this agreement a number of times in my service. This is long-awaited sidewalk project on Douglas Ave, south of Trinity. So if you could provide us any additional context or information about where this project is, Mr. Purvis.
Yes, Matt Purvis, NDOT. Project, it's currently in the right-of-way stage with appraisals and negotiations underway, and that's a point of time when we come to putting a timeline on a contract, that's the biggest unknown is what right-of-way looks like, and it's taken longer than we thought. It's been challenging with multiple needed revisions pretty much as the pace of development along this section of the corridor has necessitated changes. So the corridor around it has changed quicker than we've been able to get to this specifically. So we need right-of-way or easements along 30 different tracks on this project, so we're in negotiations for those.
Thank you for that update, sir. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Of the 30, how many do we have?
As far as I understand, it's the 30 is what's left right now.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion on Resolution 984? Seeing none, we're going to go to a vote. All those in favor of 984, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval, 11 in favor, 0 against. Did we lose 2? 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Thank you. All right, next we have committee item 7. This is RS 2025-987 by Porterfield and Parker. This approves amendment number 1 to the contract between the Metropolitan Government and LAZ Parking Georgia LLC for the operation and management of the on-street metered parking program within the public rights-of-way of the Metropolitan Government. We have a motion, please. Properly moved and seconded. I also removed this one from consent. I believe that I understand what's going on here from reading the agenda analysis, but I wondered if someone from NDOT could just give us a little bit of narration around what this amendment does and where we're at, kind of just the very brief version of where we're at with the on-street parking program.
Matt Purvis, NDOT. The briefest version is we've brought a lot of staff in-house, so we have reduced LAZ's fee to reflect that, as well as changing their scope of work to show what we've taken over what was in the original contract for them.
Thank you, sir. For those of you who remember, or maybe who weren't here, that was the intent of how we structured that initial contract. So it's great to see the department moving in that direction. Thank you. Councilmember Evan Siegel and Councilmember Cash. You're recognized.
Thanks. I also think I understand, but I just have a few clarifying questions.
Absolutely.
Are we in year 3 of this contract? Is that correct?
We're going into year 3.
Okay. And so I just want to make sure the service, they were doing enforcement. Is that correct? So we paid for those services in years 1 and 2. Is that also correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Cash, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Purvis, you said kind of change the scope of work. Could you be a little more specific about what that change in scope is?
It's just a matter of how many enforcement agents we are paying them to have, because we now have them ourselves, and just leveling out the field between what LAZ is doing versus what we are doing, as far as who's on the ground actually enforcing, who's in cars enforcing, et cetera.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Resolution 987? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? What's the count? All right, recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. All right, committee item 10, this is RS 2025-992 by Ewing, Porterfield, and Parker. This approves Amendment 1 to a location agreement between the Department of Water and Sewerage Services and T-Mobile South LLC. Can we get a motion on 992? And a second. Properly moved and seconded. All right. So I assume we have some discussion or a question on this. Someone pulled it from, I see Councilmember Evan Siegel. You are recognized.
I am mindful that we are button up against time, and so some of these I will save for a budget. But I'm just a little confused. It seems like the agreement expired in December 2023, and so I just wanted the department to kind of clarify what's been happening in the past year.
All right, thank you. Is anybody from Water here? If you would please introduce yourself.
Good evening, I'm Mary Peoples, Metro Water Services. I will defer this question to the administrative table. They have been working with legal to get this rectified.
All right, so we have a request to go to the administration table. This is Amendment 1 to a location agreement between Water and T-Mobile South LLC. I believe the council member's question was related to, it appears the contract ended in 2023 and kind of what's going on there. Yes. Okay, well, we've got can we maybe save that for budget? Is that okay? Is this going to go to budget?
Yeah, can I just speak the rest of the questions out loud so when we get to
So they'll have time,
budget?
yes.
Yeah. I think I I'm a little concerned that if it ended in December 2023 and that we're just now starting it back and they've been paying payments, is the contract, the effective date seems to be when it's passed. I'm a little worried too that we have like a gap in whatever indemnities and insurance and all that kind of stuff that happened. And so I think I also have like sort of the legal question of what happened in the past year for this site. And then also there was an escalator. And so like, is that escalator not retroactive? So those are just speaking into the air. So it budgets faster.
So, yeah, I think given the administration table some time to address those before budget would be ideal. For the purposes of the transportation and infrastructure piece of this, is there any further discussion before we go to a vote? All right, seeing none, so we'll go to a vote on Resolution 992. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval. Is it still 9? 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Thank you. All right, our final item is, I think I put that on consent. Do we need to go back and revisit? I don't, see, I print mine off at home, and so if a late substitute comes in, it's not sometimes included. What should we do? It's on. So it only needs one recommendation. It's okay without one from this. Okay, so we're good. All right, lastly, we have committee item 15. This is RS 2025-997 by Toombs, Gamble, and Parker. This amends ordinance number BL 2024-265 to authorize the Metropolitan government to modify the linear feet of water and sanitary sewer mains and sanitary sewer manholes to be abandoned and accepted for property located at 325 West Trinity Lane, also known as Madison Trinity Apartments Revision 1. Can we get a motion and a second on this, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded, thank you. And we have the lead sponsor here. I'll go to Councilmember Toombs. There it goes. Councilmember Toombs, we're on the 325 West Trinity Lane. We've got it moved and seconded. Could you give us an explanation of the amendment? Or is there a letter in here?
I'm going to punt it to the director.
All right, Director Darby, if you could give an explanation of the amendment.
The amendment is a housekeeping amendment that changes a date in a recital from November 21 to April 4th.
Thank you, Director Darby. Having heard an explanation of the amendment, would anyone like to move the amendment? And it's been moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right. Recommend approval of the amendment. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And if we could, I think I heard a motion as amended and a second. So any discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. Okay, the one quick note, that's it for our regular agenda. The one quick note I have, as we discussed on the traffic enforcement resolution item, we're hoping to have NDOT here prior to our next meeting of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, the first meeting in February, for a discussion on the traffic calming program. Several council members have requested that we do that, and they've been taking a look internally, and now we have this resolution asking them to give us some findings from that. So that'll be a great opportunity to kind of give them feedback earlier in the process and ask them questions and hear from the team about how things are working right now. So please look out for that at the first meeting in February. Councilmember Allen, do you have an announcement? The system. Okay, thank you. You're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind people the Solid Waste Committee is meeting next Monday, the 27th at 5 here in, I think, in room 1. It'll be easy to find us, but we're definitely here at 5 next Monday. At least a quick overview of the solid waste, zero waste master plan, and then just some general setting long-term goals and general meeting schedule.
Excellent. Thank you. So that's
Thank
a Solid Waste Subcommittee meeting Monday, the 27th, in one of the committee rooms, sounds like. All right. I believe that's it, and we're going to call this meeting adjourned and turn it over to planning.